Welcome and thank you very much for joining us. My name is William Dixon. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Research Libraries UK, and welcome to this third of our RLUK Research Shift events, this one on engaging in research. And we've got colleagues from the National Archives and from the National Library of Scotland, and they are also fellows from some of our programmes which we've run in partnership with both the National Archives and the Arts and Humanities Research Council. Research Shift is a new RLUK series of interconnected, interactive online events. It's designed to empower and support librarians, archivists, information professionals and colleagues across the GLAM sector looking to actively engage in research. It's been co-created with our AHRC and RLUK National Archives kind of professional practice fellows and our Research Catalyst programme, and I'm delighted to see kind of many members of them here today. And I think we seek to really reflect the diverse needs and interests of professionals across libraries. And I'm delighted that we have Jack Butterworth and Philippa Turner from the National Archives and Simona Cenci from the National Library of Scotland, who will talk a little bit about their experience of engaging in research. For colleagues who had joined us last month, this will be a little bit of a refresher, but I really just wanted to highlight for colleagues who may not have joined one of the previous sessions or who may be picking this up on a subsequent recording, a little bit about what we covered in the last session and why we're doing the Research Shift programme. So it's a new series, as I've said, about kind of an interconnected, interactive online series. Interactive means those breakout groups and a chance to talk with yourselves. We have done three, and the group felt that these three subjects, defining practitioner research, overcoming structural barriers, and this final session on engaging in research were really three good building blocks for us to have a look at. It's also really, we built it as a sort of collaborative meeting so that we can share experiences, develop ideas, and hopefully you can get to know kind of new colleagues or spark some new ideas. And as I said, it has been co-created with our fellows. And I think one of the great things about this has been the way in which we are really seeking to amplify and to build the research capacity, capability and confidence which our broader programmes are intending to do. And we believe that the shift is real. It is sector-wide. Ed Fay commented on that in the session as the director at Bristol University Library last month. But also thinking about things like the hidden ref, being able to value all the contributions. It's not just about, you're an academic doing the research. RLUK is a supporter of the hidden ref, and the hidden ref have launched their next event. They will be meeting later this year, and we're very much looking forward to kind of joining and supporting them. RLUK is a signatory to the Technicians Commitment and the importance of professional research roles. Many of our libraries are involved with REF 2029's People, Culture and Environment. And what we will come to here today is some of the experiences of our AHRC and TNA fellowships, which have really given us an opportunity to partner and collaborate with other bodies. We have also looked at how we can amplify that. So Libraries X Research as our website, how we can champion the pivotal contribution that libraries and librarians and the broader information professional sector make to the research process. And this is a key strand in our current strategic vision and something which we want to take further and forward. But as I've said, I've used a lot of C words and I'm going to use some more. So I've talked about building capacity, capability, and confidence. One of the things that I think working with the fellows, working with the Research Catalyst cohort, we also are really interested in how we can shift the dial around research culture, where we can be a broader part of that tapestry, where we can be, and I'm sorry, the inclusivity is a little bit of a stretch, but where we can be as inclusive as possible. Our programs aren't just for our broader Research Catalyst programs and our fellowships with the HRC aren't just for RLUK libraries. We've had colleagues from across the spectrum be part of those. And we're also about building that community. It was really important. The feedback that we got from our very first Research Catalyst cohort was how valuable they found it meeting each other, building that community, but also that opportunity to actually meet in person. And it's a very broad church. We're interested in all levels of research experience. We want to share kind of learning, collaboration, and encourage peer support. So I've only got one slide, which I'm going to use to summarize and recap the last session. But I think what I really wanted to do was to highlight that we had two speakers from Bristol and two speakers from Durham. And Ed Fay, the Director of Libraries at Bristol, really shared how Bristol is strategically embedding the library as partners in research to enhance the quality and scale of the distinctiveness, how they support the research strategy at the university, how they can contribute directly to REF, both through outputs, but also through people culture and environment, but also how important some of the things which we steward as librarians, our cultural collections and our digital scholarship, where they are key areas for our collaboration and where the library sits as a key piece of research infrastructure, and it's important to be inclusive. Stephen Gray, one of Ed's colleagues and one of the fellows in Simona's cohort, is head of research support. And Stephen really shared a lot of his personal experience navigating the institutional barriers as a library-based researcher, really looking at some of the challenges. And I loved the comment that he made that he navigated the twilight zone between library support and academic research. And I think he did that very, very deftly. And one of the things that's emerged out of the work from Bristol is a practical workflow guide to help library staff through the research process, which is really a key step towards that cultural change that we're really aiming at, looking to make research by professional services staff more visible, supported, and sustainable. And that's something which Stephen and Ed are very happy to share and very happy to enable us to kind of take forward. We then flipped a little bit north to Durham and Jonathan Bush. Jonathan was one of our HRC first fellows, and Jonathan really highlighted how transformative the opportunity of the fellowship was and how it's led to successful funding. So how important it has been for us to really help overcoming some of these barriers by providing these library-led opportunities to provide a really firm foundation, and also really thinking about some of those structural barriers which we identified back in the 2021 scoping report around perceptions of library staff, institutional support, challenges of getting ethics approval, challenges of being recognised by your research office. And then last but not least, Jonathan kind of was complemented by Eleanor Glenton, and Eleanor is the Deputy Director of Research Development at Durham and also takes a lead on our Research Catalyst cohort. And Eleanor is someone with a long-standing commitment to inclusive research support. She really stresses how important it is that researchers should be recognised and supported wherever they sit in the institution, not just within the academic departments, and really kind of shared some of her insights and involvement through the Research Catalyst program that we've been running. And although we recognize as well, we are very much still on a journey, which is why, while this is just a third Research Shift program, there is really many structural barriers that we still want to look at addressing. So there's still work to be done, but there's a lot of positive change and a lot of positive action, which we have already seen. So from that, really what we want to do is I'm going to stop sharing in a second, and we are going to, there's probably about there's quite a number of you. We're going to put you into breakout groups and give you a chance to share how you're currently engaging in your research. The groups will only be about kind of 10 minutes. Then you will come back. You can have and relax, and then we will sort of hand over to Jack and Philippa, and then Simona and I. So I'm going to stop sharing, and if we just look at breakout rooms, yeah, we are going to create a few of those, and I am going to click the button to close all rooms, because actually somehow we got to 2:30. I suspect that was probably because I had talked a little bit more, so I can talk less. Okay, so that all come back. Hello, welcome back. I love your background, Ilkay. In my lifetime, coming out of a Zoom breakout room is the closest I'm going to get to Star Trek teleportation. Fantastic. Right, great. Welcome back. I hope that was useful and valuable, and I have no idea. There's an algorithm. I've got no idea if it's actually putting you, if you've already been to a couple of these events, whether or not you kept ending up with the same people, or you've been meeting different people. So hopefully you've been meeting different people, and we can take it from there. However, you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to more interesting people like Jack and Philippa and Simona. So I am going to hand over to Jack, and Jack is Head of Research Grants and Academic Engagement at the National Archives.
It's very lovely to be here. Thank you very much for the invite, William. Yes, as he mentioned, my name is Jack. I lead essentially the National Archives research and grant fundraising and grant giving and wider relationship with the academic sector. So I've got a lovely department of about 25 people here at TNA. And William asked me along to give a sort of quick introduction to the National Archives and our presence in the research space. And I thought I could sit here and talk to you very boringly through our research strategy. But I'm not going to do that, actually. I'll pop a link to the research strategy in the chat at the end of my presentation. You're welcome to read it. But I'm actually going to give a slightly different sort of presentation, which is just exploring some of the landscape and the issues we confront and what we did as a researching organisation to try and navigate our way through the research world as it is right now. And what I should say straight away is that I have not coordinated this with William at all. It repeats an awful lot of the points that I think he made in his recap of the first couple of sessions, which sadly I couldn't come to. But really good that perhaps I'm sharing some of the same messages as you've heard already. So anyway, here goes. So the National Archives, as you probably know, is a government department is a cultural institution. It's the sector lead for archives in England. It is a digital institution. It is a government policy maker. It's a cultural heritage destination. It's a sort of liminal institution between all sorts of different spaces in government, in research, in cultural heritage for the public, and so on. And I joined it in 2021, having come for my whole career beforehand, having spent it in universities and having spent at some in all sorts of different fields, including just before joining TNA, working in medical research. And lots of people ask me, why did you join TNA? What was the pull of it? And my reflection on that is that actually, as an institution, it has what I call special powers because of the position in which it sits. It's a wonderful collection, of course, 270 kilometers or so of public records. It has that national institution cachet. It has that liminal position I've talked about. It has its engagement programs and its cultural reach, and it has wonderful people. And when reflecting on this presentation, I thought that many of the same qualities were true of your institutions, of your libraries, of your collections as well. And that we occupy this fantastic space and we have this fantastic opportunity that sometimes we don't even realize is coming towards us. And if you look at a sort of macro national level about how particularly the AHRC invests its money, or how it has done over the past 5 years, what I think you will see is that research is actually floating towards spaces like ours and like yours. If you look at the DISCO programme, or the Towards a National Collection programme, or the Riches programme, or the CAPCO programme, or the Community Hub that I'm lucky enough to be part of myself, there are all sorts of investments which are very bespoke to research in our sort of spaces, practitioner spaces, practical spaces. And actually, we have a terrific opportunity here. There's always so much doom and gloom, isn't there, particularly around arts and humanities funding. But actually, I think we're in a very lucky position. I have a new colleague in my team who was asked on joining the National Archive if she'd made a tactical move from HEIs to IROs. I don't think anyone's ever asked that question before. But actually, we are the growth sector, particularly where it comes to arts and humanities research. But obviously, and as William recorded this morning, there's a problem, isn't it? And the problem that perhaps you encounter in your own context is very similar to the problem that I found when I joined TNA, is that the institutions of which we're part are never quite big enough to create those economies of scale that make engaging in research and supporting grant winning a really solid proposition. And when I joined TNA, we had no financial management to speak of, no pre-award process, very little contract or legal support, no project delivery support, no ethics process, etc. And so what I set out on the mission to do was basically break those cycles, was try and operate TNA a bit like the research organization that I felt we could be. I was trying to do stuff that was most useful for our staff with research potential. And there are all sorts of actions that we put into place to make that happen. We started going for some bigger grants, first of all. We tried to run big projects that really fully funded themselves and so enabled us to develop our own infrastructure. We submitted more things more often. We sort of built the processes and systems which support researchers. We were opportunistic somewhat at times. Because we're a small institution, we could jump on opportunities at the drop of a hat that sometimes a bigger HEI might not be able to jump on. And we tried to use that to our advantage. We created a profile for research internally, and we also published about our research externally as well, because let's face it, the perception of success creates success itself. If we talked enough about our ambitions in the research space, then we felt that they might start to come true. And I think to some degree that is what's happened. And also what we did very importantly was we kept investing in our people. We ran training programs, we ran all sorts of peer-to-peer mentoring, we kept supporting people. We got to a stage where rather than if you won a grant, you were sort of being left alone to deliver it, you would actually be surrounded by a structure of administrative support and financial support and project delivery support. And that incentivized people to bid for more money and to bid for large amounts of money and to bid more often. And because they were incentivized to become grant winners, we were then able to get more grants in, and in so doing, fund the very growth of the infrastructure around these people. And this is horrendous. This is blowing my own trumpet to the nth degree. But this is what success has looked like for us in about 3 years or so. We have multiplied our grant income by about 7 times on a per annum basis. And we've gone from having a fairly small portfolio of largely small value projects or things that we were doing letters of support for, or things we had a fairly bit part role, to actually a portfolio which as of now is just over £16 million and includes all sorts of different funders from UKRI, the Heritage Fund, the charity sector, and indeed from overseas as well. So that's sort of us. And my provocation, I suppose, is just to look at everything that we've done. It might not be replicable in your institutional context. It might not be replicable in your political or cultural context either. But I think that some of the lessons about how we've built a research institution outside of the HEI system will be transferable, will be replicable, and might be transferable to you, or indeed transferable to those of you who are working within HEI context, but probably outside of the traditional academic space of departments and faculties, if you will. Because I think we have a tremendous opportunity to conduct research in those spaces, and your VCs and your deans need to understand actually how the world is shifting towards us. They also might need to understand how some of those problems that we encountered, perhaps you encountered them as well, that lack of support, training, infrastructure, cultural readiness, and they need to understand how those might be short-circuited and how those can be short-circuited in a way that brings in inward investment into your institution, wherever they are. And the solution, I hope, is something like the solution we were able to deliver at TNA, being ambitious, being opportunistic, creating a profile for your own research and your institution's research, including in whatever space you work with, in a library or a special collections space particularly, but also in investing in people. And that is why I'm so thrilled to be here talking to you for just a short moment in the context of the Research Catalyst programme, because actually the work that RLUK have done, that AHRC have funded, that we have been able to participate as well, has been so important. And I think it is continuingly important that we invest in those people, that we break through a little bit of the doom and gloom around arts and humanities research in particular, and that things like this scheme continue and actually really claim their spot as being a really important part of the future of the research landscape in this country. So that's my provocation, that's my challenge, that's how it's worked at TNA. I will pop our research strategy in the chat for you to read. If you are interested to hear more about what I've just skated over, then you're more than welcome to get in touch. My email is on screen, or you can find me on LinkedIn. For now, though, it's just my pleasure to hand over to one of my wonderful colleagues who is on the same journey in many ways as we are. So, Philippa, I will hand over to you right now. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much for having me today and this invitation to speak. I was one of 5 TNA RLUK professional fellows for the year 2024-2025. The year running February to February, so I technically finished in February 2025. My fellowship was titled Assessing and Articulating the Cultural Value of Archives and Archives as Culture. And it was designed to investigate how archive services can more effectively assess and articulate their cultural value and archives as part of culture more widely. My host institution for this was the University of Leeds, and my mentor was Tim Proctor, Collections and Access Manager there within Cultural Collections. There is a web page that just gives a quick outline of all of the fellows' projects for the last year. So I will leave you to go and have a look at that at your leisure. Now that the fellowship is officially complete, this talk is a useful way for me to further reflect on my approach to it and what I learned in terms of doing this kind of project. And so I hope that this can be helpful to others who are considering applying for this or any other similar fellowship in the future. I'm going to break down the talk into 4 parts for ease and spend a few minutes talking about each. So I've put those on the screen there, but briefly it's why I wanted to do the fellowship and what I thought it would bring to my practice and role more widely. What was different about engaging in research for this project versus my previous research experience, how I found doing the project, its benefits and challenges, and what strategies I used to overcome the challenges that I experienced. So firstly, why did I want to do the fellowship and what did I think it would bring to my practice and role more widely? So answering this, the first thing I need to do is to tell you a bit about my role at the National Archives. So I'm Sector Development Manager for London and Business Archives within the Archive Sector Leadership Department at the National Archives. So I'm in a different department and a different directorate to Jack and his colleagues, but we do sit next to one another in the office. So we do have that very close relationship just in the office, which is always useful for conversations and kind of being able to talk to one another about cross-cutting issues and so on. My role is to provide advice and guidance to all kinds of archive services and organisations with archives and individuals with archives. It's very varied in relation to some classes of records, notably public records. So we're talking about NHS records, Coroner's Court records, Magistrates' Court records, etc. And also in relation to local authorities who have statutory obligations relating to archives, we have a more regulatory role. So my role is really a mixture of advising, advocating, explaining, regulating, depending on who I'm talking to, what kind of archives are in question. I'm very much part of a team that is sort of like the GPs of the archive of the archives world, as a colleague put it once, which I think is a very good, vivid description. And so along with specialist colleagues at the National Archives from across the Archive Sector Leadership Department and the wider organisation, we can provide really specialist advice as need be. So one of the biggest constituencies of archive service that I work with is London's local authority archive services. So there's 33 of those if we include the City of London as well. And through my work with them, I'd been aware for some time of dissonance or even silence in many local authorities between the archive service and the wider culture service within the local authority. And they're often not necessarily part of the same department or even directorate, which doesn't necessarily help either. But schemes such as the Greater London Authority's London Borough of Culture were exposing more distinctly the way that archive services were often perceived as something other than culture rather than necessarily a part of it, which is important, particularly in the context of this kind of scheme where the archive service potentially has a lot to offer as part of the programming of a Borough of Culture year. And also where the records of the scheme and its success were important to collect, to reflect what had gone on and how the GLA, how the local authority and how communities had changed and brought something new into being that was going to be transformative and was always intended to have a lasting legacy. So in 2023, I'd secured some internal funding to work with a consultant archivist called Simon Wilson to produce some guidance for archivists, senior decision makers, and bid and creative teams for these kinds of large cultural infrastructure projects. And this guidance was designed to help ensure that the archive service was a part of the programming and that the records of the scheme were collected from the get-go. However, I still thought this dissonance, silence were worth exploring more deeply. And I also thought that there was something else that I could do to address it. So the fellowship seemed like a really good vehicle for that. It would give me time and space to dive deeply into it and hopefully come up with some more useful tools or guidance that would help. I also thought it would help me to provide advice and to advocate from a more informed position more widely when I'm dealing with this kind of situation. And also, it was going to be a feather in my cap as part of my professional development. Let's not shy away from that. And I really wanted to do that as part of my development in my role. So what was the different about engaging in research for this project versus my previous research experience? So my previous research experience quite a while ago was within academia. I did a PhD in history of art and I published some work within this discipline. And then I qualified as an archivist before starting my role at the National Archives. I'd not done any research within my role at TNA before, and this was definitely going to be a different beast. My output wasn't going to be an academic paper or a book or an edited volume. It was going to be something much shorter, much more accessible, much more practical. I was going to be thinking about people and relationships and getting different people talking to and working with one another, whereas my academic research was about inanimate objects and doing detective work with books and manuscripts. This would be research using methods such as surveys, directly asking people for their perspectives, something you can't do with the donors of 14th century sculpture, for example, unfortunately, for my PhD. So it was a bit scary, really, to use different methods of research that I wasn't used to. And I sort of felt like more of a sociologist, or what I think a sociologist might feel like in terms of doing this kind of research. And I hope that that doesn't offend anyone who is from a sociology background on this call. So the other big difference between this and my previous research experience was that I was, of course, doing it alongside the day job, if you will. I had a certain amount of work, a certain amount of my working week to devote to it, but I couldn't devote all my time to it. That was never the intention. It's not how the fellowship is set up. And so this is in contrast to my previous research experience, which was largely a full-time affair, although I did have experience at some points doing it in my own time away from paid employment. But this was much more defined, and I had a lot of competing pulls on my time, especially in my role. Quite serious issues can come up completely out of the blue, and they will need me to prioritise them. So it's entirely possible that I can get an email coming into my inbox, and it is an archivist saying, an archivist from a local authority saying, we just found out we're going to have a restructure. It looks like the archivist role is going to be deleted, in which case, especially because there is that legislation in terms of the local government acts and what it says about archives and records, that's something that then has to become a priority for me to respond to. And that is something that will not just be one email, it will be kind of quite a long process of engagement and advocating and advising and so on. So this brings me on to the benefits and challenges. There have definitely been many benefits to doing the project. I've developed a much deeper knowledge of the issues that have contributed to the original problem that I've wanted to investigate, and I can use these to inform my wider work. I've been able to produce something that I hope will go quite a way to addressing these issues in the form of guidance for archivists, guidance for what I've termed culture colleagues, those people who are working in kind of cultural partnership roles, cultural officer roles, etc. And also guidance for groups and community organisations and individual creative practitioners who want to work with archive services. And all of those are designed to get them talking to one another and understanding each other's needs and perspectives. I've learned a lot more about archive services in my region and more widely, including that of my host institution, the University of Leeds. I've made new connections, especially the others doing the fellowship, both those at TNA and those at RLUK member institutions. It's got me into the room with wider stakeholders, such as the Centre for Cultural Value at the University of Leeds. And it's enabled me to further my own development through disseminating what I've done through talks like this, and the one that I'll be doing at DCDC in July up in Durham. So hopefully it will also result in a wider impact within the sector when the guidance is published and it's being used. I'm really hoping that I will get feedback from people and that it will be positive feedback. So the main challenge, as I hinted previously, was time. I did, on the advice of a previous fellow, Melinda Hornton, who is our Archive Service Accreditation Programme Manager, who's in the Archive Sector Leadership Department. I put aside Thursday mornings to do the fellowship work, morning to be able to dive right into it, and Thursday because it wasn't the beginning or the end of the week. But because of the demands of the day job and responding to unanticipated issues or urgent queries in the sector, I did have to move this around sometimes. Sometimes I did have to forego it. I tried to make sure that I made the time up, but I don't think that always happened. I also found it quite hard to get my head back into the project each week and get into that kind of flow state that research projects do need. So the main strategy that I used to overcome this was something that I discovered, I would say, relatively later in the project, when I was generously given leeway, and which I was generously given leeway to do by colleagues, which was taking a couple of whole days to work on the project without having to do the day job. Putting my out of office on to say that I was working on this project, not looking at email, not having any other meetings. And this enabled me to fully concentrate on the project. So, for example, I would be able to draft a whole section or piece of guidance and really get deeply into the work. And I did do this for a whole week just before Christmas, for example. And I got more done in the first 3 days than in the previous couple of months combined. However, I was starting to feel quite isolated by the 4th day. So I'd suggest 2 to 3 days is the possible sweet spot in terms of doing this kind of thing. For the project, the kind of project that I was doing, I think overall the 1 morning a week and these short sort of research retreats, if you will, were useful, more so than a 2-week stint at Leeds, for example, which I could have done for the project and would have been entirely within the bounds of the fellowship. But I needed time for people to provide their input too. So filling out surveys, sending me feedback, and 1 longer period of intense work would not necessarily have suited this kind of more consultative, collaborative kind of research that I was doing. I think it would have suited the kind of writing up an academic paper kind of project output, which for some the fellowship might involve. And I think this fellowship does lend itself to giving scope for experimentation, not just in the kind of research that you do, but also how you do it. I will say that having a supportive mentor and a supportive line manager were really crucial to this, and getting me to where I am now with it. So I hope that's useful. It's designed to be kind of very practical and quite honest. And I'm really happy to answer questions later on. I will also be able to share my email address as well if anyone would like to discuss things further. So thank you, and I will hand back.
Very much, Philippa, and thank you so much, Jack. We're going to move into from the TNA into AHRC. So I'm going to say just a couple of minutes before kind of leading into my colleague Simona, who is a book conservator at the National Library of Scotland. But I just wanted to do just a little bit of kind of context and sort of where we are or where we have been around that. So what I really wanted to do was, first of all, to ground this in RLUK's current strategy, transforming the library transforming. It runs to the end of the year, and it's really sought to drive change, enable dialogue, and promote collaboration across the research, information and cultural sector, which is why I'm so delighted that we have colleagues from the TNA on the call today and colleagues from across the community on the call. These partnerships have really been a fantastic outcome for us and the wider community, and we really seek to continue to demonstrate the pivotal role that libraries and librarians can play. I'm thinking about this engaging in research. I love this quote from our strategy. And, you know, the partnerships that we have been really critical about that capability, capacity, and confidence. But it's also really important for us to look at how we can also engage that research and how we can bring that support to the world's kind of scholarship and researchers. So just a little bit of background, we did have a 2021 scoping study really looking to investigate the role here. And one of the recommendations around that was the Research Engagement Programme, which saw the Research Catalyst cohort, the tailored programme, and the fellows, of which Simona is one. And really that has been our kind of North Star in how we have really developed and engaged with this. And we've used this to really work in partnership with colleagues from AHRC, from ARMA, and beyond. And our partnership has led to 2 fellowship schemes, 3 Catalyst cohort schemes. We've got over 50 alumni. The Libraries X Research sort of showcase, which we'll be adding some more content to from our recent event, which we ran with our current fellows, and this Research Shift Programme, which I think has really sort of emerged out of some of the experience and the expertise that colleagues have given to us. Just wanted to highlight this map here. Colleagues in the HRC developed this, and it was really interesting when we were doing some sort of mapping to look at where colleagues had come from across the country, the diversity, and just the numbers in our Catalyst cohort and our research fellows. And there's a little bit of double counting there because Simona might mention that she is a graduate of our Research Catalyst cohort as well. I'm not going to go into all of these colleagues, but they're all details of all their research are available on our Libraries X research page. But these were our first 10 fellows. And here, if you look closely, I think up there at the top left, there's Simona. And these are our 9 second fellows. We recently had an event in London to celebrate their activities. So we have short case studies and material which we will be sharing on our Libraries X Research website around that. But we also we heard from some colleagues, directors and their line managers, and it was so amazing to hear how transformative and how powerful engaging in research and doing this work was. This is nearly the last time I'm going to mention the Research Catalyst cohort program. As part of our launch, We did have some feedback from some of our alumni from the second cohort. These are comments from Leslie McRae from Aberdeen and Kim Davis from Plymouth about the value around that, the mentoring role, really helping to, take the plunge and asking those questions. Is research for me? What is research funding? How can I do that? Where can I get some peer support? And I can see Kim in my wee screen there. So this is just so inspiring and so fantastic to see some of that feedback. So again, closes on Friday, and this is our website. Again, I've highlighted this already. So again, we'll be putting more of that content up. So really, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to hand over to Simona.
Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much, William, for inviting me to share my journey with research, which began about 8 years ago. My name is Simona Cenci, and I am a book conservator at the National Library of Scotland. And this is the title of my fellowship research, which was really based on looking at bookbinding structures. But instead of diving straight into my fellowship project, I wanted to begin with an image that resonated with me deeply when I first saw it. As a library professional, I often found myself carrying a bag full of valuable research questions. And yet, like Riran in the image, I've struggled to articulate these questions to audiences outside my immediate professional network. This challenge stems from unfamiliarity with the research landscape and, above all, with a lack of confidence. Although many practice-based professions, like in my case, conservation, are not seen as traditional research fields, they are bursting with potential. Professional services staff have the opportunity to leverage research methods to address important questions that arise in their practice. And even so, overcoming internal biases can be daunting, especially when you're at the beginning of the research journey. Since 2017, I have envisioned a research project inspired by my work as a book conservator and by my ongoing engagement with books materiality. I aim to investigate bookbinding structures and highlight their crucial role in examining books as both crafts and commercial products. However, I could not channel this energy in a concrete way. So my journey took a transformative turn when I participated to the inaugural edition of the Research Catalyst cohort program. This experience really empowered me to articulate my research questions so that they resonate beyond my immediate professional circle. I discovered the value of interdisciplinarity and learn how really to advocate for its benefits. The program instilled in me the confidence to propose a groundbreaking research project to my institution that ultimately led to a successful funded fellowship. So I wanted to start sharing this experience because if, like me, you find yourself grappling with what I now call the rerun syndrome, participating in programs like this one could be the key to igniting your research journey. But talking about beginnings, it was during one of my regular work tasks that I first encountered the Grey Collection, which ultimately became the focus of my fellowship. In 2017, while conducting a condition assessment survey of the collection, I discovered that many imprints were still bound in contemporary leather and parchment covers, echoing the eras of their production and collection. This unique characteristic positions the collection as an invaluable resource for unraveling the history of bookbinding and book trade in Scotland during the 17th and 18th centuries. A story that I thought really truly deserved to be told. So while this research has been on my agenda since then, my role as a conservator made it really challenging to dedicate quality time to this pursuit. So learning about the fellowship program illuminated an incredible opportunity to temporarily step back from some of my daily commitments and immerse myself in the study of these bindings. So with the support of my institutions and a generous mentor, I crafted a research project for a part-time fellowship application to extend over the course of 6 months. The project set out to describe and examine the structures of limp parchment bindings found on around 60 of the 16th century international imprints in the collection. My vision was to create a data set accessible through the public channels of the National Library of Scotland. These descriptions would provide essential evidence to identify some chronological and geographical features of the bindings, illuminating the events that have shaped their materiality over the centuries. So when I learned that my application was successful, clearly I was filled with excitement. It was a true boost of confidence and joy. And I quickly embarked on my research journey, creating a customized success database to analyze the diverse structures of the bindings and to analyze their component materials. I started the survey on the structure of the 60 bindings, as you can see from the image. The project has really deepened my understanding of this type of book structure, and it was an empowering learning opportunity, also because it has application really on my day-to-day job. However, I have to say that through my research journey, I also encountered some unforeseen challenges, which I would also like to share with you, with the hope that they might be helpful to prospective practice-based researchers. The design and development of the database, for instance, took much longer than anticipated, especially during the automation of data summarization and analysis. In Insight, I realized that acknowledging my limited knowledge in this area at the application stage and including a learning plan would have been wise. So I would say that why the research, of course, is essential to the fellowship, I think it's important also to view a research period and as an opportunity for learning, growth, and skill enhancement, because this is very important for the fellows and for the research too. I initially did not allocate enough time for administration, outreach, and knowledge exchange with colleagues in my fellowship timetable. And yet, these activities turned out to be integral to my research process, significantly enriching the overall project. So for this reason, I think that incorporating time for these activities into the research schedule is crucial to avoid them negatively impacting your research efforts. And researching on a part-time basis while working has its advantages and challenges. Although extending the research period allows for greater reflection, balancing part-time work can make it difficult to detach from the workplace environment completely. Therefore, I think selecting the right research format is vital, and it is important to reflect on that at the application process. Nevertheless, this fellowship has been a very valuable experience, providing training in time management, prioritization, multitasking, and strategies for effectively balancing competing demands. It is important to be flexible and reevaluate your research priorities to align outcomes with deadlines. And finally, I think what excited me the most about the fellowship was the chance to provide a tangible example of the documental value of bindings, promoting the integration of book materiality into the historical research of library collections. Typically, description of bindings do not appear in catalogues or bibliographical entries. And through the fellowship, I initiated discussion with the metadata team regarding publishing description within the library catalogue. This discussion directly resulted in the decision to digitize the binding and include the images alongside the data. So this collaborative exchanges with other professionals really opened my eyes to different perspectives, adding a broader dimension to my research. So I think it is essential to open up, talk about your research loudly, and reach out to broader audiences. The outcomes of the practice-based research can be shared really through traditional academic channels, but you can also, creative avenues also exist to make your experience valuable to the broader community. During and after the fellowship, I engaged in outreach activities by presenting my research project at professional conferences, participating in roundtables, and connected with colleagues. However, the primary research output of my fellowship will involve publishing a detailed description of on the library website for public access in a way that you can see on the slide. Furthermore, this project has sparked talks about sharing or disseminating other types of data, and which could raise to future research questions. These corollary activities are a testament on how the fellowship not only significantly impacted my career and professional development, but also contributed to the advancing institutional discussions related to topic linked to the project. In the slide, you can see a draft of what I would like to share on the library catalog. And although we are still finalizing the criteria of what to insert, the insertion on the database catalog is something that happened during the fellowship through the exchange with my colleagues. So I find it very valuable that the research has expanded outside the studio, the conservation studio. And drawing from the experience gained during the project, I also developed workshops and events aimed at enriching community engagement. In the slide, you can see images from a workshop I designed for the Doors Open Day weekend last September. These experiences, I think, highlight the outreach potential of practice-based research and underscore the contribution that library professionals can make to these initiatives. As I conclude my presentation, I would like to highlight 3 important lessons from the fellowship experience that I hope will inspire future researchers. The first one is that I really have recognized the value of practice-based research and its significance in the broader research landscape. Many library professionals hold untapped knowledge and experience, And I hope that initiatives like this fellowship will inspire others to acknowledge the research potential inherent in the work that libraries and library professionals undertake. The second one is that practice-based research encourages interdepartmental networking and collaboration. Throughout my journey, I received invaluable assistance, feedback, and input from professionals across various library departments. I am deeply grateful for their time and energy in support of my work. And third, I think that the true legacy of the fellowship goes beyond the immediate research results of the research. It is the realization that your journey continues beyond the research period. This enduring legacy inspires a renewed approach to professional challenges and fosters continuous growth. So lastly, I would like to thanks very much the Arts and Humanity Research Council and Research Libraries UK for allowing me to embark in this transformative experience. And I thank you all for your attention this afternoon.